Gang rapists in India. I've been lurking through the sub for quite some time now, and decided to post this event that happened only a few months ago. Sorry if it sounds a bit bland, I'm not the best writer. So, I'm a 20-year-old male, and I flew to India last November to meet a few family members. It was my first time flying on my own to India, despite what my family would tell me. I wasn't at all worried, since I can speak and understand Hindi, albeit quite badly. Also, I looked like I could pass for an Indian, which I thought would help me blend in. I landed at around 2 a.m., and after landing at the Mumbai International Airport, I had to catch a quick airport coach to take me from the international to the domestic airport, standard procedure. Although I found it a bit strange for such a busy airport to have such a system, I managed to make my way onto the coach. Now, I know you must be thinking that the coach must be fake, but it wasn't the coach. I managed to get to the domestic airport just fine, and as I was waiting to disembark, I saw some people dressed in airport gear, checking people's boarding passes. So, I held my pass to show the guy, and as he looked at it, he gave a perplexed look. He scanned my pass again, and stated that my flight wasn't due to depart in 4 hours. This is true, but I thought I'd chill at the airport anyways. He said that I'd have to take a taxi and go back to the international airport, as they would not let me go into the domestic unless the departure was less than 2 hours. I obviously wasn't going to pay for a taxi back to the airport, and didn't understand why the airport would not let me in. However, after thinking about all the weird procedures Indian airports have had so far, I thought this might be another one of its irritating quirks. I agreed with the guy and walked with him to the car park. He was asking me where I was from and what I was doing in India. Just some friendly banter, I thought, but I was too tired and shy to even attempt to speak to him in Hindi. I kept telling him I'm not paying for the taxi and that I have no money on me, just to make sure he wasn't going to scam me. He kept nodding and took me to the taxi he said I should take. Now, from watching Bollywood movies, I know how Mumbai taxis look like. They're yellow and black and are a distinctive model. This taxi was a normal silver-colored car with not even an ounce of credibility to pass as a taxi in Mumbai. Surrounding the taxi were a bunch of eerie-looking guys, still all looking at me with a straight face. Feeling a bit weird, I backed away a bit while they were talking to one another. Thankfully, the guy who led me to them didn't know I could speak Hindi, and they were saying stuff like, "He's some sweet goods, we'll have fun with him. You've bought a good one. I'll be sure not to let him go." Aghast, I started sweating and shaking. I know people back home have said I act a bit camp and apparently unintentionally act flirtatious, but I had no idea that a bunch of Indian guys would have any interest in me, apart from maybe getting some money. Visibly shaken, I was completely speechless and had no idea how to get out of the situation. The guy had my boarding pass and the car door was open. Then I had an idea. I said to the guy in English, "Can I just quickly buy a coffee? I've been parched for so long." He stated that the police at the door of the airport wouldn't let me in no matter how much I tried, and the best thing was to get inside the car. I insisted that I just try to get in, as I was really thirsty, and my voice started croaking. His friends told him to give me my boarding pass back and let me try it out. He gave it back and made me promise I'd come back after the coffee. I obviously obliged and gave him a cute smile as I snatched the pass and power walked it to the terminal. Of course, I didn't want to act too alarmed, as they could have easily ran up to me and tackled me. In addition, the police could have been in cohorts with them and refused me access, so I made my way to the terminal and showed the policeman my boarding pass. He had a look, and I asked him if I was allowed to enter the terminal just to make sure. He said, "Of course, your flight departs from here," and directed me to the departures lounge. I never felt so thankful in my life. I breathed a sigh of relief as I hightailed it up the escalator and passed the security check to make sure the gang wouldn't be let in. It was about 4 a.m. at this point, and all I could think of was what would have happened if I couldn't understand Hindi and went into the taxi. To this day, I shudder at the thought. My only regret is not informing the police when I was let in. I think nerves did get the better of me, and I felt distrust towards everyone. Plus, Indian police officers wouldn't have done much to help the situation anyways. Probably would have told me to keep calm and carry on. But yeah, bunch of gang rapists at Mumbai airport, please, let's not meet. Met the creepiest guy on my way home from work. This will be pretty long, so excuse me. Introduction. So, I used to work at a McDonald's in one of Berlin's worst areas, which is known to have a severe problem with drugs. I had to regularly wipe blood off the toilets and bathroom sinks. Also, syringes every other day. This one night, November 1st, 2010, I had a shift from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., and as I happened to get quite along with my coworkers and supervisors, I stayed a little longer to just pass the time. So, at 12 a.m., I finally decided to leave when I noticed that my public transit ticket had run out, and I didn't have any money or credit cards with me for obvious reasons. A coworker offered me to give me some money for a ticket, just so I'd get home safely. I just shrugged it off and set out to what seemed like an odyssey. The actual story. I left the district without any weird incidences, but after about an hour of walking, I took the wrong intersection and found myself in a street without any apartments, just some storage buildings and repair shops. I was listening to music when this guy walked past me in the other direction. I didn't mind him until he suddenly walked beside me and said something. I took my headphones off and asked what he said, and he was like, "Give me your phone." For about a minute or two, I stayed pretty calm, telling him that no way in hell I'd give him my phone. Luckily, he stayed rather peaceful as well. When the headlights of a car turned up like 100 meters away, I did what I thought was the cleverest decision at that point. I ran onto the street and hoped it would stop for me. It didn't. Instead, it maneuvered around me. Can't blame the driver, right? That's when I knew that shit had hit the fan, and I started running mindlessly, while occasionally turning my head to see whether the guy was trailing me. He was, and he was also closing in on me. So I just stopped and shouted at him that he's free to take my phone, as long as he leaves me be. What followed now was some of the weirdest shit I've ever experienced. He took my phone, saying that I will have to stay with him because he needs someone to talk to. So we started walking the street up and down. He talked about how both his parents died. Later he retconned this by telling me that his father was the head of a local Hells Angels club. Also, he told me that he and his girlfriend lost their child due to complications during the pregnancy, and because of this, he started robbing people. And I should feel happy because the last person he robbed didn't have any clothes left. That's when I knew that he was just trash talking to intimidate me, so I would not go to the police afterwards. He was pretty gentle with me, never touching me or whatever, but it was enough for me that he was about 20 centimeters taller than me. He mostly talked about his fucked up life, never letting me speak apart from when he asked me how old I was and what my name was. For a moment, when he wanted to see my wallet and found my ID, I thought it'd get pretty ugly. But after shouting at me for about 5 minutes, who I thought I was to lie to him because I told him my fake name, he calmed himself down again. At this point, we had been walking the same friggin' street up and down for like 2.5 hours, while I had to listen to the same shit over and over again. When he finally told me that he would leave now, but I had to wait for his bus with him. As we stood there at the bus stop, he again tried to intimidate me by recounting again on his undead Hell's Angels father, but also by saying that he was the member of some gang that apparently is not unknown to Berlin police. When finally, the bus arrived, he did the weirdest thing by asking me whether I had a contract or a prepaid phone. When I told him that it was contracted, he took out the SIM card and gave it to me, saying that if we were ever to meet again, he'd give me some of the money he earned with the phone, which had a cracked display, by the way. End of the story was that he left. I left, and when I got up the next day to tell my parents about it, I burst out in tears and we went to the police. He was never arrested. Creepy agent. I don't know if I'm just being too paranoid, but I figured my story would fit here, and you guys will tell me what you think. I recently put up a resume on Sexy Jobs. It's a website where fledgling porn stars can branch out and meet professional sites that help them begin their career. I've had a few 100% legitimate companies contact me, send me proof that they are real, and not simply people looking to take advantage of naive people. Until Jay contacted me. Jay called my cell before sending my profile a message. A no-no on the site, but I figured he was just eager to get going. He called about 5 times and texted me another 4 before I noticed. I had my phone on mute. During the conversation, he explained how he was a producer for a new TV show called 441, about 4 girls living and dating one man, and that he already had one girl on set, Caitlin. I could hear a female in the background, which set my mind at ease a little bit. He went on to tell me that he refused to hire black girls, mixed girls, or fat girls, as they seemed to cause a lot of drama. He went on to tell me he loved my photos, and was surprised that I never worked in the adult industry before. He asked me if I'd be willing to relocate to Nevada for the duration of the show, for 1 year. I said that wouldn't be a problem. He said he would send me a burner phone and a Greyhound bus ticket overnight, and that he expected me to arrive there by a certain time. I spoke to a girl on the phone as well, who said she was Caitlin, but something seemed off. I can't put my finger on it, but I had a sick feeling in my stomach. And after we hung up, I texted him and asked him for the photos of the house, along with the address, what company he worked for, and a picture of him and Caitlin together. He emailed them to me. His email name was not the name he gave me through the phone. Again, not that odd. Some people working in adult acting use stage names. The pictures of the house were decent, but when I looked closer, there was no way there'd be enough room for 5 people living there. Also, in the bathroom photos, I only saw 1 bottle of shampoo for men, nothing that would indicate Caitlin would be working there. He sent me a photo of Caitlin alone, a very pretty young woman, but the photo also looked like it could be a Shutterstock photo, as it was from the waist up and against a beautiful field. I reverse Google searched and found her photo. My anxiety was getting higher, but at this point in my life, I needed a deal like this. So I emailed him back, asking again for the address, and specified I wanted a photo of the 2 of them together. He did not respond until early this morning, stating that he changed his mind and refused to work with me, seeing as he was willing to send me a phone and money to come there, and I still did not trust him. I feel bad that I didn't trust him now, considering he was going to send those things, but I also feel that my requests weren't that bad. What do you guys think? Driving someone home at night. I live in a very rural, mountainous area of California, and at this time was working as a cook in a restaurant bar. I was 24 years old, and not in the best place financially at the time. so I've been borrowing my uncle's car to drive to and from work. I work from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. I know everyone in this area well, and I don't have a single enemy. I get along with everyone. One night, I had gotten done closing up the kitchen and decided to have a beer before going home. The bartender was talking to a fellow community member and trying to get him to go home. He was too drunk for his own good. There were some out-of-towners that weren't too fond of the locals' demeanor, and it seemed like it was getting intense between them. I just saw it, as a local that I knew was being annoyingly drunk, but perfectly harmless. I had my beer and went out and got in the car. I could see inside the bar, and spotted the drunk local, completely smashed. I felt bad for not offering a ride home, but was tired from work and told myself, he'll be okay. I drive away. Mind you, there's no street lamps, no buildings. It's the middle of nowhere, pitch black, quiet. I realize about a mile from the bar that I should turn around and offer the local a ride home. He didn't live far, and it wouldn't be far out of my way to do so. So I turn around at a muddy turn and go back. I get in the bar, and I basically was short with the local and told him that I would pick him up in the morning and he could get his truck sober, that I'll give him a ride home tonight. I was 24 years old at the time and a small-built female. He was a smaller-built, 30-ish looking male. I knew this guy had hit on me in the past, but I assumed he was just a 35-year-old weirdo who was lonely. I always shrugged off his advances. Anyways, with a couple minutes of reasoning, he finally hopped in the car and I took off, driving towards his home, about 5 miles away, on winding mountain roads. I didn't notice anything really at first. He seemed drunk, quiet, mumbly, but not too long into the drive, he starts saying thank you, how nice I am to help him out. I say the usual, of course, no problem. Couldn't let him be there knowing full well he wasn't able to drive. This is where I start getting creeped out. I make a turn on the road he lives on. It's a long road, not many houses. All the driveways are long, about a mile or two, so you don't see any houses. He gets really quiet. And it's dark in the car. I can't see him really well. I notice him look at me, though. I could see the reflection of his eyes from the dim lights on the radio. This is something I remember very vividly. His eyes gleaming kind of green from the lights on the radio knobs. He was just looking at me. I, without returning his gaze, said, "What's up? Why are you looking at me like that?" He says to me, "You're so pretty, and I never get this chance to be alone with you." I shrug it off, trying to play it cool, although I started regretting my decision. All of a sudden, he reaches over to me while I'm driving and tries to put his hand, I'm assuming, on my breast, but instead, his hands land on my shoulder and neck area. I start yelling at him, telling him to stop. I slam on my brakes in the middle of the road, and I scream at him to get out of this car now, and I repeat it over and over again. At this point, I had my hands off the wheel, and I was trying to push him out of the car. I had leaned over and opened the car door. I had never in my life realized my own strength, my own weak strength. This 30-something male was not budging against me. I notice him laughing, a really sloppy laugh. He says, "He and I both know that no one is around." I said to him, "We just left the bar. At least 5 people know where I'm going. Please stop. Here's a flashlight. Walk on home. I'm done with you tonight." He's quiet for a minute before saying, "I don't feel like walking much." The way he said it scared the living shit out of me. I start screaming. Not like a horse scream, but like an ear-piercing scream. I knew the scream was strong and loud, and I even hurt my own ears, just hoping someone had their windows open somewhere off in the woods. But nothing happened. We struggled for what felt like minutes, as he was trying to come at me. The entire time he was kind of laughing. He was drunk, so that was probably my only advantage. I was not. He was sloppy and trying to attack me for whatever reason. I pushed on him like I never pushed on anything in my life. I pushed so hard that I felt my arms just burning with pain. When he finally gets out of the car, I slam on the gas, not even bothering with the door. Remember, I was headed down a long-ass road in the middle of nowhere, and not on my road. It's a dead road, after about 20 miles. So I keep driving down this road I know well, knowing full well I will need to stop to turn around, but this road is like 1.5 lanes wide, and there's hardly any turnouts. When I finally do, I turn around fast and in someone's dirt driveway, afraid of the car being still for even a second. I take off driving, knowing he'll be up ahead any second. I never see him again. He was a local I'd known for years and saw frequently. I don't know if he took off to another area from embarrassment or what, but I never saw him again. I arrived home shaking red, scratched, out of breath. My boyfriend and our friend were at home playing Jenga, and I told them immediately. And they knew who it was too, and they went to try and find him. Never saw him again. That was last November. Let's hope I never meet up with him again. House break-in. This happened last November at my student house at university. The house is shared with 3 other people, 2 male, 2 female, and is a pretty standard semi-detached in a nice enough area. It was about 1 in the morning. Everyone was in the house. Myself and the 2 male housemates were in the living room, playing on the PS3, and the other female housemates was upstairs in her room. We were having a good time, laughing and chatting, when suddenly we heard a disturbance that seemed to be coming from the house next door, the house that we're attached to. Since that house was also occupied by students, all boys, we just thought they were being rowdy or having a bit of an argument. My housemate Toby peeked out of our front window to see if he could see what was going on next door. He then suddenly drew his head back, saying that someone stood on the pavement, had seen him looking. We didn't think anything of it, and carried on playing our game when suddenly we heard a huge crash behind us. We turned to see someone slamming their foot against our window and screaming at us. We all jumped to our feet, and I heard our other housemate come running down the stairs to see what was going on. A second later, there were huge slamming sounds against our front door, clearly someone trying to break through it, and a man's voice shouting, "Open the door! Open the fucking door!" By this point, I must admit, I was absolutely crapping myself. The noises of the front door stopped, and we heard the guy heading around the side of the house. My blood ran cold. The back door was unlocked. The back door led into the kitchen. The kitchen had 2 doors to it, one leading to the hallway and the living room, the other to the spare room. The living room and the spare room were also connected by a door, so there were 2 exits from each room. We all ran into the spare room, which had front doors that led out into the back garden. There was where most of the panic happened. We didn't know where to go. We didn't know where the intruder was, whether he was in the house or in the back garden. Toby opened the French doors and crept into the garden to have a look. I followed. My other housemate, Lucy, opened the door that was connected to the kitchen for some strange reason, saw the intruder, and then slammed the door closed. The intruder now knew where we were. The other male housemate, Mike, then held the door closed and put all his weight against it. Lucy ran into the living room and then disappeared. The intruder began kicking the door that Mike was holding shut until he kicked it so hard, Mike was flung from the door. Us 3 remaining housemates then ran out into the garden and did some real parkour shit, jumping over the fence into our neighbor's garden. We ran over to his patio. Luckily, Mike was smart enough to pick his phone up in the panic and call the police. I was gently knocking on the patio door and asking for help from the neighbor, hoping that he was downstairs and could hear. Whether he heard or not, he never came. Mike hung up his phone and said the police were on their way. There was a noise at the fence. We all ducked down as low as possible. There was nothing to hide behind, and the intruder rolled over the fence. It was dark in the garden, but we could see him quite plainly. If he looked towards the house, he would have seen us straight away. Luckily for us that night, there was a party in a house that was diagonally across the garden we were hidden in, and I think the intruder thought that we headed that way. So he carried on and jumped over the fence, going towards the party. We crouched frozen for a few minutes. The adrenaline had made my arms and legs complete jelly. We were unsure whether to head back to the house. For all we knew, there could have been other intruders there who came with the first guy. We had to go back though. Lucy was still in the house. We had to make sure she was okay. Toby went over the fence first, and I tried to follow. But my legs were too much like jelly, I could not climb over. After a few minutes, Mike was able to help me get over, and we went back to the house. There was no intruders in the house, and the police arrived fairly quickly. We eventually found Lucy hiding in her bedroom wardrobe. There was blood on the living room window, where the intruder had cut himself breaking through the first window layer. There was blood on the front door, the back door, smeared on the wall in the kitchen, and there were dents in the door leading to the spare room. Because the intruder had followed us over the fence, we were able to give a fairly accurate description of him, and said that he might be at the party round the corner. The police went there and asked if anyone suspicious was at the party. Apparently, they had all pointed at a man and said he just rolled over the fence. Bingo. The lads that lived next door came round to see if we were okay, and said the same thing had happened to them, except their back door was locked, so he hadn't been able to get inside. That was one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. On reflection, though, since there was only one guy, we would have most likely been able to overpower him. We hadn't known at the time how many there were, so we didn't want it to come to a confrontation. It turns out he was high on coke, so that would have made any confrontation very dangerous, especially if he had any hidden weapons. The man was arrested and charged. He was made to pay for any damages to our house and the student house next door. Getting to sleep became very difficult after this. Any slight noise was someone trying to get in my head. Eventually it passed, and I began to feel more safe. During the Easter break, however, we were broken into again. Nobody was in the house this time. The strange thing about this break was that none of the valuable stuff was broken. There was a projector, 2 PS3s, and a Wii in the living room. There were computers in every bedroom, and other electronics in Mike's room. None of this was taken, only a spare mobile, clothes, and some jewelry were taken from Lucy, which made it seem like more of an attack on her than anything else. Both of these break-ins happening within one academic year has made me feel really vulnerable inside houses now. Whether my parents' home or my student house. I'm moving back into the same student house at the end of September. Wish me luck. Walgreens Parking Lot. So I've lurked on here long enough and spoken to my mother to remember all the details. Here's my encounter. It was about November 2012 in Houston, Texas. I was taking night classes to become a medical assistant, trade school, only 8 months of school, Monday to Thursday nights, 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. I was driving a kind of girly car. I just left school and about 10:15. Had some homework I had questions over, blah blah blah. Had to stop at Walgreens for an RX. There's really only one 24-hour Walgreens near my home, and it's right down the street from my school. I'm wearing royal blue scrubs, my student ID, and I'm tired. Getting my RX in the back of the store, I'm not really paying any attention to my surroundings. But then someone caught my eye. It was this guy. He kind of stood at the same end of each aisle I was on, but I thought he was there doing the same thing I was. Anyways, I head up to the register because I've had a few other items I had gone, not just the RX, and I realize this guy has walked right past me and is standing outside near the trash cans at the entrance. As I'm walking to my car, I see him pick up his phone and he is watching me hardcore. I can kind of read lips, and he was describing my appearance, car build, all that to someone on the phone. So I get in my car, start it, he does the same. Now it's worth noting that this Walgreens is 2 blocks away from the courthouse and the sheriff's office. I drive straight there once I get my shit together in my car. The guy followed me in his vehicle before realizing where I'm really going. I park, run inside, ask to speak to a duty officer, explain what had happened and what was happening. He takes a statement from me. I describe the man in almost perfect detail, and he offers me an escort home. We drive home, him a few car lengths behind me, and we make it there with no hiccups. And no reappearance of the guy and his shitty Toyota. I park in my driveway. He circles around my cul-de-sac, and when he gets back to my house, calls me over to the patrol car. He had his laptop up, with this guy's mugshot and record right there. Asks, "Is this him?" I nod yeah. What he told me next still freaks me out. As we were driving to my house, the other sheriffs in the area found him, pulled him over, searched the car, and found a young gal, about my age, 19 at the time, in his trunk. He was known in the area for pimping, and was trying to get me as a possible prostitute of his. I'm not going to go into too many details because duh, but at the time I lived in a very well-to-do suburb of Houston. This kind of thing does not happen there, or should I say, the news does not report it there. So, creepy ass pimp, let's not ever meet again. Well, you're probably in prison now still, so... Shouldn't have shut off the lights. This is my first post to Reddit, and may possibly be my last. I have never really told anyone this story, not even my parents or my wife. It happened when I was 13 years old, so some of the details are a little sketchy. I've only ever told variations of the story in fear of telling the exact truth. So, this will be the first time it comes out legit. When I was 13 years old, my friends and I had a terrible scare one night when my parents went out with some friends. My friend Jesse and I were your typical nerdy 13-year-old boys who felt more inclined to playing with action figures and watching movies rather than call girls and play catch out in the yard. Jesse is the one friend you have growing up where we are best friends from beginning to end. We hardly see each other anymore, but we have that bond where when we do see each other, it's like no time was ever spent apart. It was a typical evening of us playing action figures, talking Star Wars, playing Star Wars Battlefront 2 way too much. My parents were going out to eat with some friends, so they ordered some Chinese food for Jesse and I. It must have been November-ish, because it was cold outside and dark, rather early in Michigan. My parents left probably around 5-ish, and we spent a couple hours goofing off. About 7, we decided to eat our Chinese food. My parents' house is situated out in the country. Their house is one of those 80s tri-level houses, so every floor is broken up. The house basically has 1.5 basements. We were sitting in the dining room, where the south wall is basically one big glass sliding door. Jesse sat with his back towards the door, and I sat facing across from him. We were eating our food, not really talking, when I think I hear 2 men speaking in our backyard. Now, this is the kind of key here. It's pitch black outside, so when I would glance out looking over Jesse's shoulder, I could only see my reflection. Nothing else. You know those moments when you think you hear or see something, but never actually tell the other person you're with because they never made any type of reaction to it, so you assume it was just your imagination? Well, it was like that. Now, after confirming with Jesse some 10 years later, he was doing the same thing I was to him. I glanced at Jesse a couple times to see if he had made any type of indication of hearing these men talking faintly in the background, but he didn't. Getting nervous, I half laughed and made the joke that I thought I heard someone talking outside. Jesse replied that he had heard it too. Now, at this point, some alarms should have went off because the property is fenced in completely by chain link fence. We had 2 dogs and lived out in the middle of the country, so it was mega unlikely anyone would be inside the fence on our property. Just as we were about to brush off the comments we made about the 2 men talking, we heard the sentence that I can still clearly hear in my head today. "They're in there." We both stopped eating at the same time. We looked at each other with horror and knew that this was not our imagination. Again, the same male voice said, "They're in there." But then he added, "Where are the dogs?" At this point, we knew this was for real. Then we heard, "Check the doors." We quickly jumped up and shut off all the lights in the house. We ran downstairs. We hid in one of my mom's closets filled with old clothes never used. The closet was large enough that we could hide deep enough that we wouldn't be seen immediately. We hid there for a couple minutes listening, or at least it felt like a couple minutes. Then it got worse. As we started to listen, we could hear them knocking on the windows. Then we heard pounding on the doors. We looked through the crack in the closet door and saw two guys standing outside the window. Only we could just see their legs, because we were in the pseudo-basement part of the house. All the lights were off, but we could still hear them and see them relatively well. Then one guy got on his knee and looked into the window and started licking it. He kept saying he was hungry. One of the men had said, "I know they heard us because they shut off the lights and ran." We were so afraid, but we kept really quiet, just wondering if they were going to try and come inside the house. He tried to open the window and couldn't, so he began to punch the window frame, which made the whole house shake. I was freaking out because I had no idea where my dogs were at, how long it would take my parents to get home, and that there was no way of reaching our landline phone to call for help. We were trapped, and they knew we were hiding from them. One guy walked off, and we could hear pounding on the glass door. I was sure they were going to find a way inside. It was only a matter of time. All of a sudden, we heard the garage door open, and saw our two dogs tore out of nowhere. We heard one of the men say, the dogs are out now." The jingling of the fence let us know they had hopped the fence. My parents came walking through the door wondering why the lights were all turned off. We had stayed in that closet for 2 hours. Those guys lurked around for that long. The story's getting way too long at this point, but longer story short, we never told my parents. The dogs were set free once the garage door was opened, which had released our dog door my dad had rigged up to be one queue with the garage door, and what seemed like only a few minutes hiding was in reality hours long. A few weeks later, our local township sent out a notice to be aware of not picking up strangers in our area, and that there have been multiple kidnapping attempts, whatever that means. The worst part is, this isn't even the weirdest thing to happen in our small town. Gotta post some videos maybe on YouTube about our local town murders that's never been looked into, because the township is cheap and lazy. Love to hear your feedback. I still think about this story regularly. Witching hours. I've been a long time stalker of Reddit and Let's Not Meet, but I've never posted or shared anything before. After reading many frightening personal encounters, I realized I could share a few of my own. This one happened just last year. A couple lost on a dark road sounds like the start of every horror story. So it's fitting. That's actually where this begins. It's early November, cold, rainy around midnight. My fiance and I liked taking spontaneous late-night drives. We'd typically start out on one of the main roads within our city and keep following it until they hit the next town. Sometimes our drives last hours. The layout of my county and surrounding counties is a little bizarre. All the cities and towns are isolated by large spreads of woods and country. I live in a relatively large college town, but a half-hour drive in one direction can land you stranded on jagged, unmarked gravel roads in the middle of nowhere, or in small, weird villages that no one knows about. It's actually pretty exciting, and that's why we do it so much. So, it's midnight and we're nearly lost. Willa, my fiance, is poking around on my phone trying to figure out what road we're on. We're on a mud path in a bit of country, framed by small towns that we never heard of. Flory, Winnica, and Tell or something like that. There are no other cars on the road, it's rainy and misty, and the headlights on my car aren't doing a damn thing. There are strands of trees and brush on either side of the road. We're heading north. She tells me that she thinks we're going across 200th Street West, which runs into Rye Road, which is a straight shot to Winnica. We make our way down the mud road for a half hour and never hit it. We've always had fun on these sorts of drives. It's the first time we've ever really been on edge. Willa says we should have found 200 Street West already, and asks if we passed it without noticing. I ask nervously if we should turn around, but she doesn't think we can without backing up into a tree or ditch. I'm driving a Mazda, and it's an awfully wide turn. She's biting her nails while scrolling around on Google Maps. 10 minutes pass, and we finally see a little black road snaking up a hill, branching off of the road we're on. I hurriedly turn into it. It's very narrow, and twigs and branches are raking the doors and the windows of the car. When we complete the climb up the little road, we find ourselves in a wide, paved clearing with a house at the back of it, tucked into the thick woods. Willa doesn't miss a beat and starts hissing for me to turn around. Our headlights shine the whole property, which is in major disrepair. No lights, windows shattered, siding and shingles shredded. The yard is littered with scraps and trash, barrels, car parts, tools, hundreds of glass bottles, branches, slabs of concrete, rocks, nasty old Chevy pickup. It looked like the house is sitting on top of all of it. Every inch of the property is entangled in nets of ivy and weeds. Willa points out little moving shadows and glowing spots around the yard. There are dozens of cats around, and they're all looking at us, and their eyes are glimmering from the headlights. I almost pissed myself when a walnut-sized rock darts out of the brush and pops against the windshield. It fractures the glass. Willa screams and grabs my arm. She's whimpering, Denny, what was that? Oh my God, what's happened? The rain is pouring and black streams down the trees, over the house, and across the pavement. All the blood runs from my face. After a few seconds, a man stumbles out from the bushes and weeds, and he's carrying a fucking shovel. He's swallowed in a big, derby navy coat and has a beard. Then a screen door on the house opens, and all the cats scatter. A tall, thin, spidery woman crawls out onto the porch. She has long, wild gray hair. She just sits up high enough on the porch that the headlights don't reach her eyes. She wipes her unusually dark hands on her skirt. But that's what I remember about her the most, how dark her hands were, and stares at us. Will is screaming and crying and slapping the door lock repeatedly. I throw the car into reverse, rolling over cinder blocks and branches, and then screech back down the road. After Willa stops crying, and there's some distance between us and the house, I start to relax. Yet, when we get out of the woods and hit a long, straight stretch of road, I notice headlights behind us. I get a stomach ache when I notice the car is mimicking all of our turns onto different roads. After nearly an hour of being pursued, we finally reach Flory and pull into a gas station being visited by a few other people. I watch the vehicle pass. The same nasty Chevy truck we saw at the house. They stalked us all the way to the next town. We wait till the truck disappears down the road before we get out, get some food, and ask for directions. On our way home, I look at a rearview mirror more than I do at the road ahead. When we get back early in the morning, my teeth don't stop chattering until I fall asleep. So, creepy shovel guy and dirty hand cat witch, let's not meet again. Ever again. Thanks. Scary experience with a creeper. Hi, I've been an avid reader here for a while on my real account, mostly because I love being creeped out by a good story, and I finally decided to tell my own story. I created this throwaway because I never told my friends or boyfriend what really happened. So here goes. Sorry if this is long. It's a little hard to believe, but I swear every word is true. As a little background, I moved out of my parents at 17 into my boyfriend's place, and that didn't work out so well, so I ended up rooming with a couple of really nice girls, but I was so broke I couldn't afford rent. My boyfriend had been released from prison after a 2-year sentence in 2010, so we decided we would move in together until we both had a place to go. We lived about a 5-minute walk around the corner from my work, and he worked in a kitchen downtown, about a 15-minute walk from my work. Anyways, on to the story. This happened in 2011, when I was a 20-year-old female. I was working at a 24-hour gas station convenience store. My usual shifts were either 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. or 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. When all this began, it was a pretty normal weekday night. I was behind the counter texting my boyfriend and reading Reddit. I, like an idiot, hadn't done a safe drop for a while, so I began counting out the excess money in my till. It was a lot of excess, so I created a bunch of safe drop slips with random amounts, because I had been yelled at 2 days prior about large safe drops. It was around 9:30 p.m. when I got all the money into the safe and all was well. I locked the safe up and returned to Reddit. I was reading for about 5 minutes when I suddenly had this creepy feeling like I was being watched. I looked out into the store, there was no one there. I checked the gas cameras and nobody was at the pumps. I had the shades down because I hadn't wanted anyone to see me with so much money. So I pushed it aside and a guy in a big brown coat with his hood up was standing there staring in the window. Just standing there on the sidewalk, staring. I had pretty intense goosebumps and was really freaked out. Even though there's no way he could have seen the money, I wanted to be safe just in case, so I messaged my brother and asked him to come by when he was done work. He agreed and told me he would let me know when he was on his way. I put the blind back and made sure the safe was locked and everything was as secure as it could be. I had a few customers after that, the usual rush between 9:45 and 10:30, and pretty soon I'd forgotten the weird guy outside. My brother texted me saying he was off a little after 10 p.m., and I told him not to worry about it, but he insisted. Protective big brother he is. He showed up at around 10:35, had a look around, decided I was safe, and left. I then opened the safe to start counting my lottery tickets, and when I get my next customer, I put them back in the safe and close it, but forgot to lock it. It was now 10:45 p.m., and a young couple that chats with me walks into the store. They browse for a while and decide on some things and then come up to be checked out. Another customer walks in. I didn't look up, but I saw in my peripherals that they went to the froster machine. I finish ringing them up and they leave. I look at my phone as it buzzes on the counter. Then there's a thump on the counter. The other customer had basically thrown the drink down on the counter. I look up. It's a guy wearing a black North Face style jacket with his hood up. I smile, trying to be polite, ring his drink in, and ask him if there's anything else he wants. He says, "Yeah, the money in your till." I smirk, thinking he's joking, and say, "Yeah, don't we all?" He then looks me dead in the eye, pulls out a big sharp knife and says, "I'm not kidding." At this point, I'm freaked out, but I keep my cool and say okay, and start emptying the cash drawer, carefully counting the bills on the counter so the camera has a chance to get a better picture. Then he waves the knife towards me, so I dump it into a bag and put it on the counter. He takes the bag and leaves the store, whistling with a big grin on his face. As soon as he is outside, I call the police and my boss. I was freaked out, and my boss just yelled at me like it was my fault and laughed at me that I was scared. He was a fucking asshole. I couldn't at that point afford to lose my job, so I kept going in. A few days later, during a day shift, the same guy walks into the store. He comes up to the counter while I'm counting something, and the other cashier serves him. I stand up and he looks over at me. My jaw drops. He doesn't react like, "Oh crap." He smirks and winks at me. I'm an idiot and totally frozen and don't say anything. He waves and walks out. I find my voice and tell my manager that it was the same guy. She calls the boss to get the tape so I can confirm, because she thought I was just still freaked out and imagining things. I never got a chance to confirm because my boss is like I said, an asshole. The guy comes in a few more times and I always say something, but eventually their doubts get the better of me, and I think that I'm imagining it is the same guy. A few nights later, I'm walking home from work, which is just up the road, over a set of train tracks surrounded by gravel. Then down the road a minute more, then a right, cross the street, then a left into the driveway of my building. I left my headphones at home, so I'm walking listening to the night. Then I hear a shift in the gravel behind me. I figure it's just an animal. Until I hear another noise. I'm getting freaked out now, so I pick up the pace. That's when I hear footsteps behind me, fast and deliberate. I take off sprinting. The footsteps keep pace with me. I look behind me and see the same guy with something in his hand. I run faster. I'm just reaching the corner where I cross when I see my brother walking home from work, coming up the street from downtown. I wave and keep running. I'm so focused on reaching him that I don't hear when the footsteps disappear. I get to my brother and he asks me what's going on, and I tell him I'm sure I was being followed. He hugs me and walks me back to the apartment. He tells me he'll be back and locks the door behind him. He was gone for an hour. He comes back, tells me he's sorry, he couldn't find the guy, and asked me to get a different job. I quit my job that night, and I never see the guy again, and eventually become able to get out after dark by alone. Fast forward, I eventually get a new job, several months later at a sandwich shop, and I haven't forgotten the events, but the fear has faded, and I only think about it occasionally. One night, I was working close at my job. We close at 9 p.m. and I get out around 9:20. Close finally arrives, so I lock the door and turn off the storefront lights. I'm doing my closing tasks in the back room when I hear a tug on the door. I poke my head out, not really looking, and wave, saying we're closed, then go back to the back room. I finish up and go out front to cover the toppings and whatnot. When I look out, and there's someone standing outside my store watching me, I get the heebie-jeebies and grab the store phone. The person sees this grin and turns around and leaves. I watch him walk across the parking lot and get on the bus before I put the phone down. I finish up my work and head out to catch my bus. A bus late, because the guy took my usual bus. I get on the bus, plug in my headphones, and start to doze off. I change buses a few minutes later. There's a bunch of people at the transfer stop, mostly students. I live in a college town. I take a seat at the back and shut my eyes for a few minutes. My phone buzzes, so I answer the message. I look around to see where I am, and there's the guy, wearing a black North Face style coat, with an all too familiar face, from outside my store, a half hour earlier, standing at the front of the bus watching me. Now I'm extremely freaked out. I of course text my brother and ask him to meet me at the stop, telling him I'm freaked out. He agrees. I watch the guy, and he gets off at my usual stop, still watching me. I stay on and ride to the next stop. A couple blocks away, I get off and catch the final bus I need that will take me home. The bus slows at the next stop, and I'm sick to my stomach. He gets on. He would have had to run to reach the stop from the stop in time where he got off. I stand as I reach my home stop. He stays seated. I get off the bus. The guy stays on. I start walking through the yard that connects to my parking lot. I see my brother coming out of the building, about 50 feet ahead of me. Then I hear the bus stop halfway up the hill. I don't even have to look back. I just run to my brother. I saw the guy a few more times outside my work and outside my building, late at night, always just watching me, until I finally told my boss I wouldn't work close shift and started taking a different bus route home. It kept up until late November and until finally he left me alone and I didn't see him again. One night around Christmas, I was dozing off watching the news when a newscast catches my eye. It showed a picture of some girl around my age, blonde hair, blue eyes like me. The reporter said that the girl had been found in the back room of her job. She's been sexually abused and stabbed to death. And another picture pops up. A picture of guess who? The guy in a North Face jacket, saying that he was the only suspect, and he was wanted in relation to this case and several other similar cases where he had stalked, then either robbed their homes or workplaces before they were found dead. I moved away from that apartment into one with my now boyfriend that has secured entrance and cameras. Fast. He was watching me from the field behind my house. This story starts with me being assaulted in November 2011. It may be unrelated, but it helps you understand quite how scary the whole thing was. I don't talk much about the assault. It was extremely traumatic. But basically, I was taking the subway, got off the train, and walked through a tunnel towards the southeast exit. I was completely alone, or at least I thought I was, until a guy suddenly grabbed me, held a knife to my throat. I still have a scar, and hissed, "Screaming, I'll kill you." Afterwards, he took all my IDs, looked at my driver's license, which had my full name, date of birth, and address on it, and said, "Nice to meet you," and just walked away. I went to the police. I go into how I wound up reporting it in more detail in another post somewhere, but they never caught him is the fact, and he's still out there somewhere with my college ID, my driver's license, and various other things. Even worse, he had been wearing a mask. So, If I could see him in the street or outside the college, I would have no idea it was even him. On to the main story. One day, walking home from college, I noticed someone walking behind me, not too close, maybe 100 meters or so, but they were taking the same turns as me. That doesn't necessarily mean much. It's a fairly common route back from town for people living in our estate, but it put me on an edge, especially once we got closer to my house and he was speeding up, closing the gap little by little. I really didn't want him to know where I lived, because I would be alone in the house for the next few hours at least, but I also had nowhere else to go. After the third alleyway in a row, I'd had enough, and looked around for a house with its lights on, bolted to the door and hammered on it. No one came to the door. Then this guy was getting closer, so I just hammered harder and yelled, "Dave, Mike, Ian, Connor, Jason, Andrew, Owen, Matt, stop lifting weights for a minute and let me in. There's a creeper following me." Seemingly convinced that the house was full of large, muscled men about to come to my aid, the guy turned around and got the hell out of there. It was scary, but I just figured it was one of those things. After that, the phone calls started. No one would say anything. They just breathe slowly and heavily and then hang up. I'm an artist, and my phone number is on my business cards and website, so I assumed it's just a prank caller. After a while, the phone calls stopped, which was a massive relief, at least until 2 weeks later, when I came home to find the front door unlocked. I know I locked it, because I live in a dodgy area, but nothing has been taken, at least that I could see, so no one really took me seriously. I called the police, who didn't give a flying fuck, but after I reminded them repeatedly I'd had an attacker who knew my address and who had made threats against me, they finally agreed to have a police APV drive past every so often and keep an eye out. That turned out to be bullcrap, but whatever. A while after that, I came home after making a quick trip to the local shop. After putting the second load of laundry on, got in and sat on the couch to watch Air Crash Investigation with my cats. I noticed the cat seemed a little bit skittish, but they are strange creatures, and so I ignored it, until I went to go and get the laundry out of the washer, which was in the kitchen, on the other side of the hallway. The kitchen door is always closed, because otherwise the cats will eat all the food, so I had to open it to go inside, and that's when I saw that the whole floor was flooded, as in completely awash with water, and the washing machine was empty. I just about shit myself. I turned around, legged it into the living room, locked all the doors leading into it, and phoned my housemate to ask if she'd been home that day. She of course said no, and asked what was wrong. When I told her I thought someone had been inside the house, and asked if anything had been stolen, but all the electronics were still there. Laptop, TV, everything. I start to feel a bit like an idiot, even though there is a part of me going, what are the fucking laundry? Because who the hell breaks into a house and doesn't take any electronics? I sigh, start apologizing for bothering her, and then glance up at the drying rack and notice that all my underwear is gone. That was it for me. I grabbed the cat and booked it outside to call the police again. Once again, they seemed uninterested, so I called my friend Sean, who is a badass, and he went through my house and established no one else was there, and told me to call if there was anything else. Not sure what else to do. After all, how could he have gone in without breaking a window? I went back inside, but didn't move off the sofa until my housemate came home. Later that week, I found a small screwdriver in the bush by the front door. Upon closer inspection, there were dozens of tiny scratches around the keyhole. Weeks pass, nothing else happens, and I'm feeling like an idiot. Sure, my underwear and other laundry is still MIA, but what can I say? I'm great at finding explanations for things. More time passes, and my housemate flies home to England to visit her parents. I'm a little wary, obviously, but tell myself there's nothing to worry about, and get on with life. This works for a few days, until one night, at about 1 a.m., I'm sitting in my bedroom doing online jigsaw puzzles and happen to glance out the window. There was a man standing right on the other side of the fence, between my yard and the empty field behind my house. Not moving, not showing any sign of doing anything, just standing and looking up at my window. I told myself that he was just a random nosy sod who was out walking his dog or something, and had seen me silhouetted in the window with my light on. So I closed the curtains and tried to ignore it. 20 minutes or so later, curiosity gets the better of me, and I opened the curtains again. He's still there, and hasn't moved an inch. I flipped out, grabbed my phone, and called 999. There's a man standing outside watching me. Where? The field behind my house. He's just standing behind the fence. Is he on your property? No! Call us when he is. But he's been there nearly half an hour, and he's right behind the fence. Can't you just call us when he's on your property? Great. So glad I have these brave officers on my side. An hour later, he's still there. He still hasn't moved. I crack and grab the phone again. Hi, I called earlier. There's a man in the field behind the house, and is he on your property? The whole charade is repeated over and over again. I grab my stuff and get out, but I live in a pretty grim estate, and it's a pretty crap turn of events. If I fled a prowler only to be grabbed by a gang with knives. Once again, I called Sean. This time, I told him to bring the gun. He got there fast, and I took him to the backyard. The guy was still there. I saw this look cross Sean's face, and he said loudly, "It's really lucky I've moved in with you now, isn't it?" and loudly cocked the gun. Boy, I hate to be anyone who tried to break into my house with guns and all. He glanced around, said, "Oh, there's that pesky rat," and raised, aimed, and discharged a gun in one fluid motion into the ground, maybe 6 feet in front of him. I wish I could say the guy ran away, because that'd be less creepy, but what he did was even creepier. He just turned and slowly walked away into the darkness. Sean slept on the couch that night. As of yet, I haven't seen the guy again, and I've since changed my name and canceled everything with ties to my address. I've also cut my hair and completely changed my style of dressing. I never wear skirts anymore, even though I used to wear them every day, because the man on the subway had specifically said how much he loved women in skirts. I still don't sleep too great though, to be honest. White car with polarized windows. First of all, I want to say I'm from Mexico. Police stuff here is pretty shitty, and I do not have a police report to prove my story, but I do have pictures I took of the aftermath. This happened a few months back, around November. I was coming early, 1 hour from work, because there was a massive outage in the area, so we had no electricity, and we couldn't work for shit, so we got to leave a bit earlier than usual. The day itself was rainy and cold. I was in a bad mood. I guess because I spent the last 4 hours doing nothing because of the outage and wasn't allowed to leave instantly. So I go of going outside to the bad weather for nothing and going back into the bad weather to go home. Waited 40 minutes for the bus to arrive and had a huge drama in it about a lady wanting to take my seat just because she was a she, but that's another story. Anyways, I got home, opened the entrance gate, locked it behind me, and entered the house. Closed the main door, but like it wasn't locked, just closed. I'm next level annoyed with all my morning and things that happened after it, so I don't want to play for shit. The TV in my room is fucked up, so I decide to go to my mom's room to watch anime and eat while chilling down enough to do my usual routine, video games. Because of this, I don't use my gaming headphones. I don't slave myself to all the mighty world of games. Instead, I'm in the furthest room from the door, well aware of the outside sounds and all. I order food, I go to receive it, I come back inside, and again, I just close the door without locking it. Back at my mom's room, I have my laptop connected to the TV while watching anime, and I suddenly hear this weird and loud sound coming from the main gate. I stand up and walk towards the front window, and there was this white car with polarized windows parked in front of my house. A guy standing in the front of my gate and moving the lock. I obviously get this what the fuck feel since I'm home alone. And I don't know these people. Are they trying to break inside my house? So I pick up the phone and call the cops while still peeking outside. This guy keeps moving and twisting the lock, trying to get rid of it. Note, it's goddamn 1 p.m. daylight outside. They just don't give a shit. I told the person on the other side of the line that someone was trying to get inside my house, told her how the car looked like the person I was watching, and that I thought there was another person involved since the car was still on. Please send someone over, I'm really scared. I'm home alone and both my parents work very, very far. The guy apparently gives up while I'm still on the line with the operator, explaining her everything I can with a kind of rushed voice. I watch him get back into the car, closing the door and leaving. My worst mistake was telling the same thing to the operator. So they're gone? I think so, he just got into the car and left. Are you locked inside your house? I'm locking the main door right now. Okay, they might have given up. Stay inside and locked. Can you please send someone over anyways, please? I'm alone and I don't know what to do if they'll come back. Sure thing, don't worry. And the call ends after she asks me again if I'm okay and safe. I make sure the main door is locked. I double check, I triple check. I peek outside one more time, and I don't see the car parked there anymore, so I decide to go back to my mom's room and continue eating my food before it gets cold. I was chatting with my best friend, so I explained to her what just happened and assured her I called the cops, so she wouldn't be worried. Not even 10 minutes passed, when I hear another weird-ass sound. And it's not coming from the gate this time, it's the damn front door. They are trying to break inside my front door. That means they got through the damn gates already, and I didn't listen to them doing that this time. They are inside the porch, trying to get inside the house through the front door at goddamn 1 p.m. in the afternoon. I freak out. I remember I typed really fast to my best friend, they're inside. Closed the laptop, almost ripped the HDMI wire out of it, picked the wireless LAN phone, my cell phone, and got myself locked in my mom's bathroom, my back against the sink, and my legs pushing the door to avoid it getting opened in case they got that far inside. I see my phone. Is it really worth to call the cops again? Fuck yes! I dial 911. I don't get a reply. For fuck's sakes. I called 10 minutes ago and there's no police guy here, and now you won't pick up? Right. Think. I can't call my mom. She'll freak out and try to get home in less than 5 minutes. When her office is 30 minutes away, she'll crash if she listens to me like I'm talking like it's a goddamn race. Call Dad, yes. He'll call Mom and tell her what's going on in a more calm way. She'll freak out anyways, but not at the same degree. Neither of them will arrive on time, but at least I'll give the strangers one hell of a time trying to get in the bathroom. So I dial the number while I'm thinking of that. I talk like a rap god. Someone is trying to get inside the house. Why are you telling me you're in the house? No, someone is breaking in. Are you home alone? Yes. Lock yourself somewhere. I am. They're already trying to break the front door. I'm on my way. The next minute felt like an hour, and it was just 1 minute. I stopped listening to the sound of the metal bar breaking the front door. But I don't hear any other sound. Are they inside? So yeah, like the idiot I am, I open the bathroom door and walk a bit towards a corridor that connects my mom's room to the rest of the house. I don't get out of cover, never. But it was still a dangerous and stupid move. I peek from the side of a bookshelf and I see the front door from my position. It was still closed. Did they close it after getting in? Are they in my room in the kitchen? Are they still outside? I start hearing voices. So I walk out of my mom's room with shaking legs and my phone on hand. I notice that one of the voices is from one of my neighbors. I see the door clearing from where I'm standing now. The door is still locked. The metal thingy that holds it closed is in place. I walk more towards the door and to a side, so I can peek through the window again. There's not one nor two. There's 3 guys in my porch, and one more standing on the side of the white car with the polarized windows. My neighbor from the next door is standing across the street and behind a car, questioning them on why they're getting in the house. The 3 guys run back to the car, while the 4th is taking a picture of my neighbor. Just a minute after they drive away, my neighbor is carefully walking back to his house. I rush to the door and force the lock open. I scream for my neighbor to not go inside his house. He runs back to my gate and watches me as I jump out the front door. He rushed inside my porch and asked me if I was okay. Just then I broke down crying, scared to death of what was just about to happen if it wasn't for him. I explained to him that just a bit before I hear him, that I called the cops, but I made the mistake of telling the operator that they left. He brings a blank from his house and gives it to me, since I was in shorts and shirt and it was cold outside. My neighbor finds on the floor the top part of the gate lock. They legit cut it. The damn thing was cut. We never found the lower part. We see the door, The side of it is completely messed up. The knob is kind of broke. The latch is almost completely useless because it was about to separate from the wall. Police guys arrived 2 hours after my first call. They take notes of what I have to say, apologize for being so late, but they didn't even make a formal report. That night, slept with my mom for a week after that, having nightmares every day and missed the next 2 days at work. To this day, I have no idea if they just wanted to steal everything or if they knew I was inside, nor the reason why they chose my house and not any other. I live in a pretty medium-low neighborhood, and my house is one of the hardest to break inside of, since we do have a gate, locks and all. Other houses just have their porch open and the main door with just a latch to keep it locked. No idea what they wanted. I hope I never live a situation like this again. It was terrifying. Hands down the most horrible thing I've experienced in my 23 years of living. Also, my life luck was drained in this incident, with everything fallen in peace for me to notice, locked the front door and all that. I didn't get home with a horrid mood. I would have just locked myself in video games, and probably wouldn't have listened to the gate, thus not locking the front door because of it, and just getting surprised by a gang of strangers getting inside my house.